Not a single bomber was lost to enemy fighters. Word spread like wildfire. By spring 1944, 14 of the 15 fighter groups in the 8th Air Force flew P-51 Mustangs. The P-51 fundamentally changed the air war. On March 4, 1944, the 8th Air Force launched its first major raid on Berlin, 560 miles from England. 730 bombers, escorted by 800 fighters, most P-51 Mustangs. This mission, impossible 3 months prior, was now reality. Mustangs escorted them all the way to Berlin and back. In January 1944, Lieutenant General James Doolittle took command. He made one critical change. American fighters were free to pursue German fighters anywhere, relentlessly. The mission shifted from defensive protection to offensive air superiority. Find the Luftwaffe, destroy the Luftwaffe everywhere. Doolittle called it his most important military decision. This doctrine was unleashed during Big Week in February 1944. Over 6 days, the 8th Air Force flew over 3,800 heavy bomber sorties against German aircraft factories, escorted by hundreds of fighters on offensive sweeps. The Luftwaffe fought desperately, but Mustangs hunted them down even on their airfields. The 8th Air Force sustained losses, but the Germans lost over 262 fighters and nearly 100 irreplaceable, experienced pilots. Their morale collapsed. By D-Day, June 6, 1944, the results were clear. Allied forces flew over 14,000 air sorties. The Germans flew approximately 300. German ground forces called for air support. None came. The Luftwaffe was impotent. After D-Day, bomber losses plummeted. Missions that cost 30 to 40 bombers in 1943 now cost 3 or 4. The P-51 Mustang made that difference. By May 8, 1945, Germany surrendered. The 8th Air Force had destroyed the Luftwaffe, achieved total air superiority, and helped win the war. But the cost was tremendous. Over 26,000 8th Air Force men were killed in action, more than the entire United States Marine Corps lost in the war. Over 4,700 heavy bombers were lost. These were sons, brothers, fathers. None of this would have been possible without long-range fighter escort. None of it without the P-51 Mustang. That single aircraft fundamentally and irreversibly changed the strategic situation. Mustang pilots destroyed 4,950 enemy aircraft. The men who made the Mustang possible, Edgar Schmud, James Kindleberger, Ronald Harker, worked largely in obscurity. But the bomber crews knew. The Mustang represented a realistic chance to complete their missions and go home alive. Before the Mustang, survival was improbable. After, it was likely. That difference represented thousands of lives saved. The 8th Air Force won the air war over Europe because leaders recognized when existing doctrine was failing catastrophically and had the courage to find better solutions. The mission was complete. Done at tremendous cost, but done. These stories matter. These men mattered. Thank you for listening. At 8:32 on October 14, 1943, American bomber crews across eastern England prepared for what would become one of the bloodiest days in the history of the United States Army Air Forces. The morning was cold, damp, and fog-laden. From dozens of airfields, 291 B-17 flying fortresses rumbled to life. The routine was familiar, the tension palpable. Most knew they were flying into a death trap. The 351st Bomb Group, like many others, had been briefed at 5 a.m. When the intelligence officer revealed the red ribbon stretching deep into Germany, to Schweinfurt, groans filled the room. Everyone knew what Schweinfurt meant. Just 2 months earlier, a mission there cost 60 bombers and 600 men. Now they were going back. Schweinfurt produced over 40% of Germany's ball bearings, vital components for all military equipment. The mission was necessary, but the cost would be immense. By October 1943, survival statistics for bomber crews were brutal. Only a 35% chance of completing 25 missions. 2 out of 3 men would become casualties. These weren't just numbers. They were empty bunks, friends who vanished, and unanswered letters. The target was Schweinfurt, 390 miles from England, over 6 hours in the air. The problem was getting there and back alive. American P-47 Thunderbolts would escort the bombers only to the German border, then turn back. For approximately 3 hours, deep inside Germany, the bombers would be alone. 3 hours without fighter protection. Alone meant watching bombers explode and fall with no way to help. Alone meant dying. This pattern of loss wasn't new. The August 17th double strike on Schweinfurt and Regensburg had aimed to split German defenses. But fog delayed the Schweinfurt force. German fighters, initially engaging Regensburg, were refueled and waiting when Schweinfurt finally arrived. The Schweinfurt force faced the full, rested strength of the Luftwaffe. German fighter pilots were experienced and innovative. They attacked where B-17 defenses were weakest, head-on, giving gunners mere seconds. They attacked in formations, overwhelming defensive fire, or used heavily armored bomber destroyers with 30mm cannons. Any damaged bomber falling behind was doomed. The self-defending bomber formation doctrine, on which American strategy rested, proved catastrophically wrong on October 14th, after 74 P-47 Thunderbolts departed due to low fuel. The 291 B-17s were alone. At 11:13 a.m., the first wave of German fighters struck. Messerschmitt 109s diving head-on. The first B-17 went down at 11:15, a wing snapping off. More bombers fell, exploding, burning, breaking apart. The sky filled with debris and parachutes. The attacks were relentless from over 200 German fighters. At 2:40 p.m., after 3 hours of running battles, the surviving bombers reached Schweinfurt. Intense flak hammered them. Then the bombs dropped. Schweinfurt burned. The target was hit. The flight home saw more B-17s fall. Finally, at 3:40 p.m., P-47 Thunderbolts reappeared. German fighters immediately broke off. The escort, though late, shifted the odds. By 5:45 p.m., the surviving bombers landed. 291 had taken off. 60 did not return. Another 17 were damaged beyond repair. Total loss: 77 aircraft, 26% of the force. 650 men were casualties. This was Black Thursday, the highest single mission loss for the 8th Air Force. The strategic impact was minimal. The human cost devastating. General Eaker knew daylight strategic bombing without long-range fighter escort was failing. They desperately needed a fighter that could fly deep into Germany, fight, and return. In October 1943, that aircraft existed, but was not yet widely available. The story began in 1942. North American Aviation was asked to build British P-40s. Instead, President James Kindleberger proposed a completely new, superior fighter, flying in 120 days. Chief designer Edgar Schmud delivered the prototype in 102 days. It was fast and long-ranged, but its Allison engine was dangerously underpowered at high altitude, unsuitable for bomber escort. Then, in April 1942, Rolls-Royce test pilot Ronald Harker flew the new fighter. He recognized its potential and its critical flaw. His direct recommendation: install a Rolls-Royce Merlin engine. The Merlin, with its sophisticated two-stage supercharger, was perfect for high altitude. In October 1942, the Merlin-powered prototype flew. Its results were extraordinary: 440 miles per hour at 30,000 feet, faster climbing, highly maneuverable. Crucially, with external drop tanks, it had a combat radius exceeding 800 miles. It could escort bombers to Berlin and back with fuel to fight. This was the North American P-51 Mustang. Production of the Merlin-powered P-51B ramped up. By November 1943, the first Mustangs arrived in England. Pilots quickly saw its combat effectiveness. On December 5th, the 354th Fighter Group flew its first bomber escort mission. Mustangs stayed with 60 B-17s the entire 280 miles to the target and back.